Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. Welcome back to the podcast. Welcome back to Gaming Compute. On this podcast, we talk about side hustles, finance, career, economic decisions, and related topics. And today we're going to be talking about a little bit about, continuing that compassion fatigue topic, but tying it more so into burnout. So what burnout is it basically what it sounds like. You're running yourself ragged to a point where you just feel completely like, you're not able to self-motivate every day so easily. Things just appear a lot harder, than they need to be. Compassion fatigue and burnout can both contribute to a lot of anxiety at work, a lot of depression, a lot of worry, a lot of loss of sleep, and that in turn, creates issues with replenishing your energy as well, because you're not sleeping as good, you're not probably doing like the fun self-care things that like help you to get rid of that negative energy and negative tension, like exercising and yoga and tai chi and walking and getting fresh air and like getting some outdoor time and interacting with your friends, things like you come home from work and you just want to like veg out in front of the TV and do mindless stuff. But it's like that doesn't necessarily always like replenish you. You're not like putting in energy. You're kind of just have no energy. And so you're just tuning out of the mental, discomfort of it all. And the memory of the day and the upcoming dread of tomorrow. Like that's kind of what burnout feels like, is kind of like, okay, like I'm dreading tomorrow and today sucked, and it's like it doesn't feel like there's going to be like an end in sight, and even if there's an end, it's hard to like really be able to easily cope with it. And I bring it up because it's something that's coming up often in the field that I work in, and with myself I've experienced it as well. And I've always been kind of lucky that when I need days off, I can easily take them, I can easily schedule them. If I am sick or have an emergency, I can like speak up about it, and like the director, the boss will know, and I'll be able to just like have things covered and not feel like overly pressured to be working if I really don't feel like I emotionally or mentally can. Or if I, like when I got COVID, it was like they were very supportive with it, and like, hey, if there's anything you need us to take care of, just let us know. And like they would check in with me a little bit and just be like, hey, I hope you're okay, I'm thinking about you, and like, how are you doing, like, oh, it's okay if you have to take tomorrow off. It was always like, I never felt like, oh man, if I don't go in tomorrow, I'm gonna be like at risk of losing my job even though I have COVID and I can't really work. And like, I never really felt like that. Plus they still pay us the same rate anyways, past a certain, I think we accrue almost 8 hours per pay period. So every 2 weeks we get an extra 8 hours or so. So it's like every month we kind of add 2 days that we can take off. And so it accrues pretty quickly. And then not only do we have paid time off, we also have sick leave. So I haven't even ever dipped into my sick leave, and I had multiple years where I had like over 100 hours of like paid days off, paid time off that I can use in hours, over 100 hours. So that was like over 2 weeks worth of, days I could have taken off before even having to dip into the 80 hours of sick leave. Right now I'm at the lowest I've ever been, with like 46 hours of a PTO balance, meaning I can take 46 hours off. That's still already like a week in most of one day. So it's already like 5 days I can take off. and I already took off like a week because of COVID, so I don't really have any week that I need to take off coming up. And then somebody told me from work to check and see if I can count the week I took off as COVID hours, because I think we might still have access to like specific COVID hours versus like using our precious PTO, but that's still even paid. And so paid at the regular rate, so I'm not like losing any money by having to take work off when it's stuff like, oh, like my car broke down and like I'm in another city and my work laptop and everything is at home and I'm like out of town and I can't get home by 8 a.m. tomorrow to log in, and like maybe it's like a late on a Sunday night and like there's no place to rent a car where you can like drive and then wake up and go to work on time. It's like emergencies like that happen, or like you have car trouble or something, you can't like leave town till the mechanic fixes your car on a weekday, and like my stuff is in another city, stuff like that, where it's like, you can't like plan that, like, okay, just because I left town, I'm not going to be able to get back home. So you don't always just lug your work stuff around with you. If I'm going to like San Bernardino or like the mountains or something, and I'm literally just planning on coming back after a night or two over the weekend, I'm not usually going to be lugging all my like work supplies and stuff with me, because that's a risk too. If somebody like breaks into your hotel or robs your car or something, that's all your work stuff gone, when it's like I didn't need it with me because I wasn't planning on working anyways from there. So things like that. It's not common that there would be an issue, but it's like, God forbid you leave something in another city or whatever, it's like some things you just don't really need to be coming up as problems in your life. So that's one thing. And then another thing is, just trying to be, just having time that that you can take off, that there won't be a hassle on it. So you're not like at risk and people aren't having like an attitude with you. It really helps to have a job like that. So ideally, when you're looking for work, being able to look for jobs that, you're able to combat like any kind of burnout with being able to just take the time you need for yourself. And if you really are like, if it's not really just the burnout itself, if it really is like anxiety and like trauma and like depression and stuff like that coming up, it can help to engage with like therapy and different sorts of like support groups, or even if you have like spiritual groups that are supportive or other kinds of support like that, you can connect with those types of people and be pretty just pretty like pretty solid. But I don't know, I think it's kind of easier said than done, right? Because when your energy is depleted, when you feel like you kind of have nothing left to give, it's hard to be like, now I have to give all this energy back into myself. It can take a couple extra days to kind of feel recovered enough to even start working on your own self with stuff. Like, usually I notice that for me when I'm burnt out, I need more than like a 2-day weekend. I need like the 2-day weekend, maybe an extra 1 or 2 days. And then I start to feel like, okay, now I can start going to the gym more, eating a little healthier, get things back on track. I need about like 4 days just to kind of be able to kind of like get back into a little routine, and then a couple extra days to like get that routine kind of rolling. And then I can come back to work feeling replenished when I've already started like a new routine. Like, ideally for me, that kind of works better than just like trying to do it while I'm still working every day, or I only have like 2 days off because it's a normal weekend. A lot of people notice too, this is one thing that to me is usually a sign of burnout, or an early sign of potential burnout, is when you have a 3-day weekend, do you notice feeling way better after a 3-day weekend than you normally feel after the regular 2-day weekend? Right? Like, usually when I notice that, I'm like, maybe I need to start taking a couple days off here and there, like, and not being like negligent and always trying to weigh the situation, like, of course, people have emergencies coming up and all kinds of stuff like that, but I never want to get myself into a position where somebody complains to me because they feel like I'm not really, being responsible with the time I'm taking off, and then that would become more stressful because then you're like, oh, like I'm not, you think I'm not really like doing my job as well as I could do it, and that becomes very stressful because now you've got somebody on your case that's telling you, it's making it a little uncomfortable for you to just easily take off a day or two. That can be a little disheartening to kind of have to deal with that, with somebody kind of pressuring you to work when you really feel like you can't. And depending on the field you work in, like if you work in the mental health field like I do, it's like, oh my goodness, like the last thing you need is to be having like intensive therapy sessions when you feel like you're not even like functioning on your own self, and then you have to try to help somebody else function. It's like, it gets a little tricky and, hard to really deal with that kind of thing. But, I mean, you can hang in there, but definitely, if you don't have days you can take off, just like with compassion fatigue, kind of like seeing how you can arrange your schedule based on your natural energy. Like, I know a lot of people hate Mondays, but for me, Mondays are usually my strongest day because I'm coming off of a relaxing weekend. So usually Mondays, I'm like pretty excited to be at work. It's a new week, I have a new mindset. Usually by then, I'm kind of like, whatever happened last week is behind me by that point. So that can help just to like have a harder Monday. I mean, it's harder to get through the week a little bit because you are depleting more energy. But if you know that you only have intensive stuff on Monday, then the rest of the week you're kind of like, it's a little bit more relaxed. Or if you can kind of talk to like the people in charge of your schedule to see kind of how they can arrange your schedule for you. Like, maybe you're better with like certain types of tasks in the morning and certain types of tasks in the evening. Like for me, I know I prefer in the morning to have like sessions, and then towards the later afternoon to be like doing most of the typing. It's better for me that way, just personally. And then like I have a lot more social energy in the morning time. Like usually by the time it's like 2:30, I'm not really trying to be talking to too many people, because I've been talking to people since 8 o'clock in the morning, so, or a little after 8, maybe like 8:30 in the morning. So it's like, I've had like all these sessions going on and stuff all day. Like I'm not trying to have them all the way to like the last minute of the day. So we're supposed to document concurrently, but I usually, do the calls for the sessions earlier in the day, and then some paperwork midday, and then documentation later in the day, especially because sometimes with our sessions, like different stuff comes up for different clients, like multiple times in the day. Like maybe they'll call you back, or maybe you'll get in touch with a provider or whatever, and then you kind of have the full story by the end of the day instead of having to open like however many notes just to like explain one thing that you started at 8, and then it came up at 11, and it came up at 12:30, and it came up at 1 o'clock, and then it's like, oh my goodness, like I could have just put this all in like one service, if it's the same type of service, and just like threw all the information into one note. And once I have all the information, like usually most of my clients know that like I'm not really taking sessions by like 2:30. Like I usually put them in a queue to be able to call them at like 8 a.m. And I usually don't purposely schedule sessions later in the afternoon either, because I know like my energy is best socially in the morning time. So usually I'm able to kind of rest assured that like after my lunchtime, I'm kind of winding down my day, and I kind of like, what we say, like, kind of like front load the start of my day with like sessions that are more just like just more like energetic, and I think people can can tell my energy's different earlier in the morning than it is later in the day. So, but yeah, I mean, I've been there. It's hard. It's really hard, and it can be a bit of an ego downer too, to kind of come into your boss, like kind of feeling like, oh, tail between my legs, like I feel a little bit defeated here, and like having to reach out and be like, look, I'm struggling with this. I mean, it takes a lot of courage to be able to, come to your boss and like admit, like, hey, I'm having some trouble with this, like I need kind of a bit of support, you know. And if you have a good boss, they're going to hear you out because they want you to do well, and they want you to be like, functional on a routine basis. They don't want you like half falling apart, and not able to do your job, and then looking for another job and quitting. If you're like a really good part of the team, they're not going to want to lose you. And so hopefully they would work with you on it. But I know it can be a little bit of a, it's hard for some of us to really go into like an authority figure and just be like, like I'm struggling right now, and it doesn't have to be like some deep like crying, like, I mean, it happens that people come into their bosses crying. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying it doesn't have to be like some deep, like emotionally overwhelming situation where you're like crying in your boss's office and like, just like, unloading a lot of your like emotions on them and stuff. Like you can kind of like still be able to kind of like, just have a conversation about it. I mean, there's nothing wrong with crying and stuff like that, but I know, like, a lot of us do have a lot of like shame around it and stuff, and like ideally most of us don't really want to be like crying at work. Ideally it's not like, a fun situation. Like I've had situations like that where I've been like, clients just like railing through me like in the middle of a session, like on the phone, and I'm like in a room full of other coworkers, and I'm like, I know everybody can like overhear this session with this person just like screaming at me, and I'm just like sitting there just like dumbfounded and can't even like, really feel like I'm supporting them, and kind of freeze up or something, and then like they hang up on me or whatever, and then I'm just like, oh man, that sucks, and then like having people around you being like tense about it and being like, oh no, like that sucks that they just had like a bad session. Like for me, it's just best when people just leave it, and I would just like leave the room and just be like, okay, I need to kind of regroup. I didn't really like it when people were like right on the spot, like, oh, are you okay? How are you feeling? Like, it's like, dude, like, leave me alone. I'm not like trying to like talk to you right now. Like, I just got my ass handed to me by this client, and this like just overwhelmed with their own issues, and they definitely take it out on us a lot of times too. And just how they're reacting to us sometimes, and then, like yelling at us and just being like verbally abusive and stuff. Like a lot of us who have dealt with that kind of stuff, it comes into the workplace, and then you're just like, I don't want to deal with clients that are emotionally abusive towards me, or like feeling like I'm in a vulnerable position having to like come to my boss. Or something like that. Like it's just not comfortable. And so it can be hard to address burnout when it's like you have situations coming up where they're burning you out, or where it's like stressful just to try to address the burnout, because the people who need to help you address it, you have to talk to them about it and kind of problem solve what your options look like. If they're not as easy as mine are, where I can just email my director and just be like, dude, I need some days off. Can I take these days off? Or like, we don't even have a direct process like that. We basically put a request in the calendar. That request goes to the boss, and they just click approve, and then you get an email that they approved it. It's like, that's as easy as it gets. Like, we don't really have like a complex process about it. Unless we're not like at our computer, then we can like email the boss when we're off site, or like have their number and call them, and then tell them that we need a day off or whatever, and they pick up their phone and stuff, and they get back to us right away. And like, so even if it's on a weekend, a Sunday night, a Monday night, like Friday night, like whatever, like they'll get it in the morning and they'll respond right away usually. So they're pretty like connected to us, and as long as we're like available doing our jobs, usually there's not pushback that I've seen. But another thing too, the last thing I guess I would say is like when you're burning out, it's hard to like keep that responsibility at work and showing up on time and like, meeting all the goals that you need for productivity. Like your focus might be off. For me, I get like foggy. So it's like, even though I know I slept and even though I drink a little bit of coffee in the morning, even though I know I'm well fed, I get a little foggy in my mind. I'm like, I'm like not really as energetic as I would prefer to be right now. But it's okay. It's okay. You can get through it. And, if you have to look for work, sometimes you have to take those days off to like look for jobs. Sometimes that's just how it happens. If no one's willing to work with you, you still have to do what's best for yourself to be able to sustain your own self and family and pay your own bills and not get into some kind of financial trouble, from not being able to work enough and stuff, because you're burned out. Like, you don't want it to become some kind of cycle where you can't really easily get a leg up on it. But yeah, sometimes for me, the easiest way to approach something, honestly, which might sound weird, is to look at it from a physical point of view. Like, if I have something emotional or like mental kind of going on, I look at it from a physical point of view and I try to find like the closest physical situation that might seem similar to what I'm dealing with. Like, I can only do so many chin-ups or something. I can't even do chin-ups, but for example, I can only do so many chin-ups and I have to keep doing chin-ups. And, every time, this person keeps, the trainer keeps like making me do chin-ups and I literally can't do them and they're getting like upset with me. Like, maybe that's like a situation that's almost like you have a team lead that keeps like placing certain tasks on you. That's like a task that maybe you're not too skilled at and you're just not able to develop, the skills to really do it as easily as you see other people doing it. And you notice they keep making you do it. And it's kind of like, like maybe you have like a physical injury in your arm where you're trying to do pull-ups and you just can't get the pull-ups right because you already have that pre-existing injury. Like maybe you have something with yourself that you're not able to do certain tasks, like maybe it's not a task that you need to specifically do, but they keep asking you to do it when there's other people who would be better for it, and it's just like causing you so much stress. Like, how would you address that situation with a trainer with your arm? You would tell them, right? You would be like, look, I can only do this many, physically, I'm just not capable of doing this. I've had a history of, I was able maybe at this point, then I had a history of this other thing. Like, you don't have to like unload on people about all kinds of stuff, but like, that's kind of how I would approach something. It's like I find a situation where it's like, okay, how would I talk to my trainer about this pre-existing issue that I already have, that I know that they know I have, but they're just kind of not really like maybe remembering, and then they're getting mad at me because I'm not doing it, when it's like they already know that when they hired me, I wasn't going to be fully able to do this part of the job specifically, like maybe you're not good at math and then they have you doing this like math task and then they get mad that you're not doing the math accurately, but you're like, well, I'm already really not good at math, and like it's not really part of the job description, but there's a little part of the job that might involve some mathematics, and then they make you do it, like something like that. Like how would you address it? It's like sometimes it really helps to take it to another scenario. Like for me, it helps to take it to like a physical performance scenario of like, how would I address it at a gym or with a trainer or with a running buddy or somebody spotting me or whatever. Like different positions at work and different types of tasks at work can kind of be like equivalent to something you do athletically, and then I would kind of problem solve it that way and see if I can kind of like put the scenario, into like the work setting again, and then just be like, okay, does that work? Would I be able to approach it kind of similarly to how I would approach this other similar kind of issue? And then, kind of helps me kind of find methods of how to like deal with stuff, so I'm not like burning out and feeling like everything's just piling up to a point and I can't really like address it. And then after a while, I got really good at like just knowing how to address certain things, knowing the chain of command, not being like too scared of like your bosses in certain situations and stuff, and just trusting in the team and the staff, and everybody being able to pull their weight. But I don't want to make these too long right now, but that's it for now. But hopefully this is helpful, and thanks for listening.